Once that happens, we'll be live.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I'm good. I'm good. I have to be able to read this.
Here we go.
Yep. There'll be some people show up earlier or whatever.
Okay, so it is now live.
Okay. Thank you.
I've just put the
Yeah. First time I do this. Once you do it a few times, you get used to it.
I haven't done it for a while.
Yeah. No, I was watching one of your videos there on that video editing program you use. Looks like it could be quite involved if you really wanted it to be.
Here we go. A few people have joined already.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone.
Yep.
So,
I start typing. Does it work? No. Gotta click there first.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Oh, hang on a minute. I can't do this way. I've got to do something rather thingy. I haven't done a... I'm just going to turn you down for a second. Mm-hmm. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the live show. I haven't done this for a while. I haven't done a live for so long, since last year. Can't remember how to do it. And actually, YouTube have changed some of the parameters. But anyway, with me live is Stan McDonald. Hello, Stan.
Hello, Richard. It's good to be here.
It's very nice to be here with you on our first Richard Vobes live stream of 2023. I had promised to do a live before, never got around to it. People sent me some questions. I still have them, general questions, but we'll get to that in another day. Today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is Ask Stan McDonald. We're testing out his legal knowledge. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, Stan is here, somewhat in the dark. Have you got a light you can put on?
Yeah.
That's very kind. Look at that.
No worries.
A big hello to a few people out there. The stream might get quite busy, so I'm just going to read out a few names as I see them. We've got Susan Messer there. Hello. Silver Saint. Hello to Curtis, to Moody Mother, to Richard Cooper, Caroline Johnson, Derek C., Bob Dog, Julia Caroline, Melvin Parker Armitage. Apparently, she was practicing the flamenco. I'm a flamenco dancing. She was practicing. Brilliant. Very hot. I don't know where you are, but it's very hot here. Hello, says Alf Rigg to Stan and Rich. Thank you very much. Nice to have you here. Hello, Richard, says Paul, Timmy, Jimmy, a DJ. I can't read you all, obviously, because there's going to be a lot of you. But thank you so much for coming along. So, what does Stan know? Says Hugo Ago. What do you know, Stan?
A little bit of something and a whole lot of nothing.
So I thought just to get the thing going, I would just ask Stan a little bit about how he got involved in all the legal stuff, because I don't know if I've actually asked you that before, Stan.
Actually, you did on our introductory when you first introduced me to the group. Or the crew, the crew, as I'll call them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. Then I am a bit, a short-term memory. It's all that organic food I have. It's not good for you, So it is very good for you. So yeah, just give us a quick rundown then, and I shall be scanning the chat for questions. We do have a couple of questions which have come in on the email, which I have got to go and find, but we'll do our best. We're only here for an hour, by the way. We officially start at past. We just thought we'd try getting the stream open early and see how this works. So Stan, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how it all came about that you are the brains of the channel.
I don't know if I'd confess to that part, but how I got going in this mess is I used to do machine shop work, and I was working on alternative energy, running your car on water, trying to investigate different things to that nature. And what ended up happening was the city decided to bother my family. And at the time I said, oh, now what the heck do I do? I didn't know anything about law, but I also worked for the U.S. Department of Defense. And in doing that, I was subcontractor to them. I had to get top level security. I had to go through some lawyers and people to do this. And so I called them up and I said, what can you guys tell me? I said, I got to, deal with this mess. And I quickly found out that there was no lawyers around that would even handle the case. And there's a reason for that, because those lawyers are licensed. At that time, I was in Canada. So they're licensed by the province, or in this case, you might call it the state. and it's a conflict of interest. They won't go up against the state or the province. They also won't go up against either one of their own kind. So if you have a lawyer that does something incorrect, you're going to be hard pressed to get another lawyer to represent you to take this matter before court. And so after fumbling around trying to get these people to do something, I started to read and read and read and read and read and read. And I printed out statutes and I made my own law library, because that's the only way you can do it. And I advise everybody to go, and if you're dealing with a certain topic, print out the actual statute or the act, because they may change it. And if they change it, you can refer back to the old one. If you're still involved in a legal matter, you can say, well, it says this here. I don't care if they changed it last week. This has been ongoing for, 2 years or whatever it's been. So that's what I tell people to do. And once I started to read all this stuff, I was advised by the legal people that I dealt with to get a copy of Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. And I got a hold of that thing. I ordered a used copy. It was a lot cheaper. And I read through every act I had that was related to what I was trying to do. And I found out quickly that these acts all apply to persons, and I'm not a person. And when I first told a few people this, they said, okay, yeah, this guy's gone off the deep end. But I realized there's 2 classes of persons, and I just went on from there and started to study this stuff. And when I went into court, I had no idea. I had 10 days to learn this whole process and do it. And I did it, and the judge, crossed out all of the garbage from the municipality. And I thought, well, hey, good, it's over with. Big massive stress, and I had no sleep for a couple of days and didn't care. I was driven to get this thing right. Once I started to learn this, though, it became fairly easy for me. So then I just said, okay, well, now that I've learned this stuff, why can't I use this to help other people? I mean, I wouldn't want some other poor sap having to go through the garbage that I had to go through to learn this junk. And back in them days, we didn't have YouTube and Facebook and all the, stuff we have access to nowadays. It was like, oh man, go get the paperwork. And I sat in court for a couple of days to learn how the process worked. I wrote notes and did what I had to do. But I did it. And after I did it, I said, okay, now maybe I can use this to help other people. So that's pretty much how I got into it.
And here you are, helping. And your videos, certainly on here, on this channel, have been very, very popular. And people have been emailing me, and I've been sending them on to you, as you know, and you've been saying, please, don't send me too much. It's so much. You haven't really. You've been just accepting it. And you've been an absolute sport, because people do email me and they suddenly think that for some reason that just by association with a genius like yourself that it's rubbed off on me, and I can tell you it hasn't. So when they say, Richard, how do I get out of this situation? And I think to myself, I haven't the bloody idea, no clue. I know a man, off to you.
There you go. Yeah.
And there you go. So we've got lots of people in. I don't know how many people are actually here. I can't tell myself, but it doesn't really matter.
I don't think it tells us. There's a thing up in the corner, but I don't want to press on it because it might blow up.
Yeah, don't press anything. All we know is it's working. So here's a question, Stan. What about hate speech being implemented in Ireland? Does Black's Law book or common law or institution law help?
Well, if it's discrimination, there's your human rights violations in regard to that, and you can look up some case law probably through Black's Law, but as I think Richard and I went through one other time, depending on what Black's Law book you have, obviously it's going to come up with different results for certain things. And when I had the Black's Law 4th edition, the one I had, it actually had case law in it. Some of the Black's Law books don't have case law, but if you can find case law, you can also use that to support your case. And what I would advise everyone to do is 9 times out of 10, you're either going to be the plaintiff or the defendant. You got no choice. It's one or the other. And you're going to have to probably file an affidavit in court, because an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth. Now, at some point, if Richard's willing to do it, I can do a presentation on exactly how to write an affidavit. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Stan McDonald, all one word, there is a specific video that deals with affidavits. And because you need that anyway, if you can write your own affidavit, and if you need help on my end, if I can look at that affidavit, it saves me asking a million questions, And generally what I do is I read whatever people send me, as long as they don't send me 15 emails with 15 different attachments 15 times, then I'll read through it. And if I have any questions, I'll make up my own determination what I think is right. And I conversation back and forth until I get the facts the way I understand them. And then if I don't believe that you can win a case for a certain reason, I'll tell you. And then you can either fill in the pothole in the case or, no, you won't win because of this. And I don't want you wasting your time going to court, but that's entirely up to you. But that's generally how I do it. So if everybody knows they need to do an affidavit, then write the affidavit up. And when you do your affidavit, do it in Word or whatever. And then double space it, or at least 1.5 spacing, because that's what the court's like, and at least make it 12 pitch. And do your when you make your statements, make them sequentially, like a paragraph at a time, and try to stick to one point at a time. So each paragraph has its own point number, and each thing deals with one specific topic where possible. Sometimes there will be an overlap, but that's the way it goes. And based on that, that's what the courts are going to need to do your case anyway. So you're not wasting your time.
We will definitely do a video on an affidavit, and you can explain its purpose and the reason and how we set it up and all of that. That will be great. Leslie Taylor asks, here's a question for you. She says, even I think, I don't know if you're male or female, Leslie, because I know there's 2 different ways, but I'm going to head my bet that you're a lady. Even if we don't know, even if we know we're legally correct, how do we get the decision when the establishment simply enforce the decision they want and steamroller over us?
Well, that's a common thing. When you go up against the government, we'll just call them the government for now, they don't like you to win, because the problem is that there's bonds on a case and the judge makes money on it. They don't declare it in their taxes. There's all kinds of illegal stuff going on. But if you don't get the verdict you want and your case is solid, your only option is to either, and I don't recommend this, just say, to heck with you guys, I'm going to do what I want. But the correct approach is to file an appeal. Now, if it's related to council tax, generally that's done by the legal advisor, which is not correct. That's illegal. And then when you ask for your appeal, the same legal advisor will review your case and he'll say no. And then what you have to do at that point is you have to file paperwork into the administrative court. Now, where I'm located, that's the administrative court in Manchester. And you can ask for one of 2 things. You can ask for a judicial review, which is a review of the conduct of the court to see if it was legal. Or you can ask for an actual appeal, where you actually bring the other side back to court because you believe what the judge did or whatever happened was done incorrectly. But the one thing you have to keep in mind is when you file an appeal, whether it's a judicial review or an appeal, you have to show the court where the judge made an error. Now, if you forgot to file certain paperwork, or you didn't file the right paperwork or whatever, that's not an error in law by the court, so your case will be thrown out or you will lose. So you have to show where the judge made a mistake or where the court made a mistake. Now, sometimes there's your adversary, your counsel, or whoever they are, they'll come after you and they'll start saying you're an opto-pseudo litigant or you're a free man on the land. And as soon as they do that, you interrupt the court and you tell the judge point blank, that's an attack on the person. And as long as you didn't use any of these opto-pseudo litigants that, that's not me in the capitalized name, or it's not spelt right, or any of that crap, because that doesn't work. But if you can, show where they're attacking the person, I object, Your Honor, that the prosecutor's attacking me. It's an attack on the person and it's not permitted. The judge should theoretically step in and say, hey, no more of this. And, if they keep doing that, the judge will eventually hold them in contempt of court. You usually get 3 warnings, but depending on how serious you upset the judge. So the idea is to be polite and let the other side upset the judge.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Horses in My Heart asks a question and says, what about planning permissions and lawful development certificates? I'm not quite sure what the question means, but what about planning permissions and lawful development certificates? I don't know what they are.
Okay. When a person goes to develop a property or make a significant change to the property, maybe they want to put in a I don't know, a bridge, or maybe they want to divide their property, subdivide it so they can put two houses on it, something like that. They generally have to go to the municipality and go through the planning board, or the planning officer, and apply, and you draw out like a plan, a floor plan, a blueprint, and tell them what they want to do. Now, one of the issues that people have, and Richard and I really seriously have to get onto this, but whenever he has time and I have time, your property probably most of the time is private. Now, I don't know where exactly you're from, but Canada or US or UK or Germany or whatever. But when you apply for something through the planning people, they turn around and when you ask for permission, you're actually granting them jurisdiction. Now, in Ontario, they don't have the right to ask you to do anything unless it's got 6 dwelling units or more and it's commercial. So if it's private, you don't technically need to ask for permission. The same rule applies here in the UK. I'm not sure the limit on the houses, but if it's your own private property, you technically don't have to ask for permission. Now, anytime you go against the so-called established government, be prepared that they're probably going to try and say you owe this or that or whatever. One example, as a reference, they tell people in council tax that if you don't pay council tax, they can potentially do a committal to prison. And that's actually false. That's actually fraud on the court, so remember that, because that committal to prison is only applicable in a criminal prosecution, not in a civil claim. And since these people brought you into magistrate's court, which can hear both civil or criminal claims, there is no criminal element because there's no injured party, so therefore there must be a civil claim because you only got one or the other, right? There is family court and other stuff. We're not going to get into that. So when you get into that now, they can't do a committal to prison. So if they do something, and I'm just using that as an example, and you know it's fraud, you can interrupt the court again and say, Your Honor, I object. That's misleading the court and contempt of court. And so now you got the council tax people on two different things now, right? They can't do that. And another question, which I was asked in the email, was how do I stop them if the bailiffs come? Well, if the bailiffs come, the bailiffs can come. Doesn't matter. But one thing they're going to try to do is they're going to try to get access to your property. And when they go to get access to your property, don't let them in. I don't care what they give you for a piece of paper. Don't open the door. Don't let them in. Because once you let them in, they're going to try and evaluate your assets and try and take things from you. They can't theoretically take anything that you need. However, most of the bailiffs, or at least a lot of them, aren't certified bailiffs. That's the first problem. And second, they have no right inside your dwelling, inside your house. The only downside now is if they find your car outside, they can potentially get it towed, put it on a flatbed or a tow truck and tow it away, or clamp it. So if you are in that situation, make sure that your vehicle is parked in a garage or somewhere else where they can't find it. Right?
Yeah.
They can keep after you for up to a year.
And we'll do something on bailiffs and strategies for that as well. We've spoken about that as well.
Yes.
So this is quite. I'm just making a list of some videos that we can do, but it's great to have these come up. Okay, so here's another. By the way, thank you for the super chat that just came in from Sean James Cameron. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's a question associated to that. It's been so long since I've done these lives. I'm trying to find all the questions. So this is one from Pedigree Mongrel, who says, isn't Black's law superseded by more current legislation? He goes on and says, you can't be hung for stealing firewood these days. Reference to case law in Black's law book are out of date. Now, funny enough, I do have I went out and bought the 11th edition, which I think is the latest one. And I've compared it with PDFs of some of the earlier ones, say, for example, looking up what a human is. And in some of the earlier ones, it says a human is a monster. But Black's Law's number 11 says it describes you not as a monster, but as a living person and things like that. So they seem to have modified a lot of the language now.
That's correct, Richard. Depending on what law book you look into, and I will answer your question in a second, depending on what law book you look into, the definitions change. However, there's a maxim in law. If you guys go on my YouTube channel, and Richard and I have also done a presentation on legal maxims, older in law, it has more authority. So this is why when we did our primary legislation for 1688, we dealt with the Bill of Rights and the Act of Settlement and the coronation oath and all that. That was the fundamental creation of a current government. And because it was created by the monarch, or if you want to call it crown, spelled CROWNE, it has what we call precedence. So everybody's heard of the word precedent case law. Well, if you look in Black's law and you can find a precedent case law, yeah, okay, maybe you're not hung for stealing firewood, but there's a lot of other precedent case laws that are still in there. And the only reason you're not hung for stealing firewood is the hanging rules, the hanging system of dealing with, breaking the law has been dissolved and gotten rid of. But it doesn't mean the whole darn book is wrong. It just means there's a couple things in there that may need to be changed.
And if it's stealing, it's still stealing.
Yeah, theft is theft. That's a criminal offense.
Right.
Which, by the way, if they take your car, that's a criminal offense. Right? Back to the council tax thing. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go to one of the emails that was sent in now. And this was sent in by a chap called Patrick. He says, a lady I know had a broken hip during COVID. And they fixed her hip, but they neglected to give her any physiotherapy after the operation. And the result is that she can hardly walk now. Is there any way that she can sue them for neglect or find out what went wrong through a DSAR?
Yes, and I actually did answer that question, but I'm going to answer it again. That person or somebody in that situation, because I also had dealt with a couple of car accident cases, same thing. And if you can prove your claim, okay, and I don't mean this to be derogatory or mean, don't take it that way. The thing is, when you make a claim in court, he who asserts must prove. It's a legal maxim. So if you assert that your medical procedure for whatever was not done correctly, take pictures or get documents from the hospital or your doctor or whatever. And if you have to, use the FOIA request process to do it. And then when you get that information, now that is usable in an affidavit, as we were talking earlier about the affidavit, and it will become an exhibit in the affidavit. And so then you make a statement, okay, whatever, I was injured in a car accident on June 3rd, 2023, and my car was damaged on the right-hand side, see Exhibit A. And then your next statement would be number 2, because it's sequentially numbered, if you recall. I received medical treatment at ABC Hospital, and they did not provide me any sort of physiotherapy. Here's a copy of my medical report, Exhibit 2. As a result of not receiving physiotherapy and proper medical care, I now suffer from, stiff hips, and I suffer from joint pain. Here's a letter from my doctor, Exhibit 3. And so what you're doing is you're starting to build your case. Now, with respect to the doctors, all doctors have insurance policies, insurance underwriters, and so does the hospital. So you can then now find out through your DSAR, your FOIA request, who that underwriter is. And what I would do, if it was me, is I would turn around and file a claim, and I would list them as either an interested party or as a claimant, as a defendant, right? Because from the malpractice. And they're going to get this, and they're going to go, holy crow, we don't want to be sued. So they're going to go to the doctor on your behalf, more than likely, and say, hey, you better fix this. We don't want to pay out a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. So hopefully they'll work for you. And if they don't, you don't care, because you're going after both of them anyway.
Excellent. That's what we like. Okay, so here's a more easier question that I think I can answer, but a lot of people might be thinking about this or having problems with this. This is Jim Joe. He says, can I just cancel direct debit for TV license and leave it at that? And let me just tell you, because I saw lots of videos on YouTube with people coming in claiming that people have got televisions and this, that, and the other. And I've seen these videos where people have put the foot in the door and they're saying, oh, you've got a television in there, and there's, all these troublemakers. I didn't have any of that problem. I have to say, I just got in touch with the TV licensing people. I said, I don't have a television anymore. I no longer use the BBC. I think I actually had to ring them and have a conversation, which was unusual with a human being. And I said, I don't do this and I don't do that. I said, I've deleted the BBC's app. And it's true, I don't have a television connect. I have one television, which is what I'm looking at here. It's not connected to the outside world other than through the internet, which I only use it for this. I don't want to watch mainstream media. I mean, I physically don't want to watch it because it'll make me sick. And it's all full of lies, and why would I want that? I use it here as a monitor in the studio. So anybody could, if they wanted to, turn up, but I wouldn't let them in. But if they did, they would see there's actually no television here, just monitors. And they said, okay. And for 2 years, they said, we'll come back and ask you again if you need a television license. And I said, okay, it's fine. And I got a letter. It just said, do you still not wish to have one? I said, no, thank you. Did that, and another 2 years has passed. So I've had trouble-free from TV licensing, but a lot of people seem to struggle with it. So what's your take on it, Stan?
Well, actually, your approach is 100% correct. If you notify them that you don't watch BBC, why would I need a TV license? Technically, if you want to think about it, they're sending a signal, which is something you don't want. And anytime something is something that you don't want, it can be classified for the most part as an assault. So you can actually say, well, you're assaulting me with your signal. Get it the heck out of here. They won't do it, of course. But if you turn around and as long as you don't let them in your property, right, in your building, then they have no jurisdiction to do anything because they are asserting that you have something. They'd have to take you to court based on what evidence? There is no evidence. You've already informed them that you're not using the television. And if you're over a certain age, I forget what the age is, but you don't have to pay for a television license anyway if you want, if you really want the truth. I think it's 75 or 80. You don't have to pay for a television license.
I think it's 150 or something. It may be more. I mean, it was about 150 I was paying.
No, I'm saying the age of the person.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, the age of yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they said you have to be over 150 before you're exempt.
Yeah.
That's one way.
Black and white TVs used to be free too. It was only when you wanted to go to color.
Yeah. Well, you could always just turn the color down. I'm sure people used to do that. Thanks to is it CA for an $11 super chat? Thank you very much for that. I don't know if there's questions associated because sometimes you see these things and they go, oh yeah, there's a question associated, but I can't see a question unless I click it. No, it says love from Canada. Oh, there we go. So here's another question that came in by. Now I know you're going to love me for this one because it's a nice, easy, complicated one. This is from Dinah, and she says that she's currently dealing with inheritance tax. And I wondered if you could reach out to your contact, Stan, and ask him if there's any research done into inheritance tax and how you would like to avoid paying it.
Well, yeah, inheritance tax depends on how the inheritance happened and what was transpiring prior to that. Like, why did it come through? That's not a quite simple, easy answer like most of them. But there is a way around deferring some of it. And in fact, if you do it correctly and set it up correctly, instead of paying the whole lump sum through at one time, if you do it properly, you can defer that and probably get rid of most of the payments, or if not all of them, because technically it's a gift, and gifts are non-taxable.
Well, I wish I'd known that when I had to pay inheritance tax of quite a large sum on my father's estate.
Right.
Presumably you can't claim it back.
Good luck getting anything out of the government.
Well, exactly. Okay, here's Deborah Hazel asks, she says, how do we refuse the new boiler system? And I assume she means that we're going to be pretty much mandated to get rid of our gas boilers at some point and have these heat pumps because they're going to save the world because they produce heat, I assume, from inside the earth as opposed to the sun's rays coming down from outside the earth.
Well, you can simply refuse it because to change over to a new heating system, a new heat pump, or replace your oil boiler or your natural gas boiler with a heat pump is going to cost you money. Mm. Now, unless they could prove it's more efficient, and there's pros and cons to both sides of that equation, you can state, you can conditionally accept to do it, say, I'll do it, but you're going to cover the bill. Because why should you, if something's working perfectly fine, why should you incur an additional costs? And then you, as the consumer, would evaluate whether or not you think this is a good idea. Do a little research into heat pumps, and some people think they're great, and some people think, well, not really, and other people think they're junk. And if you run a heat pump in the wintertime, it's not quite as efficient, or if you run it in the springtime, it's not as efficient, depending on who you talk to.
Would that be the same? We hear about you'll own nothing and be happy, and one of the ways that this is likely to come about is by what do they call it, rating people's houses and saying, oh, well, your insulation isn't sufficient, you're leaking left, right and centre, and so you're going to have these very, very stringent costs which would be so expensive that people would end up getting into debt and then have to sell the house. The government buys the house and then rents it back to you, and at any point they could kick you out. So if something is mandated like that from the government, are we able to say, no, we don't want that, thank you very much?
Yes, because a mandate, if you actually look in one of the Black's laws, a mandate is only done upon consent. Because one thing that you viewers are, like, everybody's trying to fight council tax or fight something. And the one thing I can tell you that, and Richard and I will eventually do a video on it, whenever I can nail him down. All these governments, they're all corporations. If you look on the SEC.gov website, which is a Security Exchange Commission, you're going to find out that, I'm not going to say for sure it'll be there, but England and Canada and all these other places, they're all trading securities. They're all corporations. Now, there's a thing out called the Clearfield Doctrine, for those people who want to write that down. Richard and I once, at some point, will do a presentation on it. And what it basically states is the United States government was involved in this thing. And the Clearfield Doctrine basically said that if a company or whatever takes on the role and operates like a company as opposed to a government, then it assumes the same capacity or the same authority as any other corporation. So given the fact that these are corporations, these are not governments. And so one of the things that the government or the courts often say is, well, the Crown has immunity. Okay, so I want to explain that because I've got a number of emails on this. Now, there's two spellings of Crown. There's C-R-O-W-N, which is the two houses of Parliament. And then there's C-R-O-W-N-E, which is the actual monarch. So in order to save confusion, right, when they're talking about the Crown has immunity, which Crown are they talking about? And in actual fact, both are correct. And here's why both are correct. Because the two houses of government, think of them as actually two houses. Your one neighbor beside the other, okay? Now, what one neighbor does inside his house, that's his business. What the other neighbor does in his house, that's his business. So they technically are sovereign, right? They have sovereignty from each other. But as a collective, right, they have to agree. And when they agree, that's how we end up with a statute, and a statute's not law. Now, the Crown, C-R-O-W-N-E, is the monarch. And the monarch does have sovereignty from the two houses of government, spelled Crown, C-R-O-W-N. So when they state that, yeah, that's true. Because what you're dealing with is you're dealing with the fiction, right? The Lord's spiritual, temporal, and commons. Well, what the hell's that? Pardon my way of explaining things, but that's three separate parties that agreed to something. Now, how something is supposed to become law is this. One house of the government, say they come up with an idea. And then so they toss it around in their house. And they all debate it and do whatever. And then they bring it to the second reading of Parliament. And they give it to the other side and they debate it and whatever. And then it's supposed to be noted as a public announcement. Now, this is done in the Gazette. So anybody wants to do some research in dealing with their own court case, look in the Gazette and see if this thing was ever publicly published. 9 times out of 10, it isn't. So if it's not published and it isn't given, a chance for the public input, then it's not a valid law. And keep in mind that a statute is not a law. Now, once this is done and everybody agrees on it, then theoretically it's supposed to receive royal assent, which goes back to the Great Seal Act, which Richard and I covered in our primary legislation. And it's supposed to receive royal assent. Now, when we deal with Canada, for example, and the UK, same thing. But in Canada, we have a constitution that was developed in 1982. It did not have the public's input, and in fact, it did not receive royal assent because even the lady that was doing this in BC, she didn't sign off the laws, and neither did the Queen. And the Constitution was contingent upon a couple of different factors, which the Quebec province didn't agree to, so Canada doesn't have a constitution. Now, when somebody asked me today, it was in my email, did something from 1965 receive royal assent? No. I don't care what it is. The answer is still no, because the last document that received royal assent was in the late 1800s. Richard looked it up for me one day on the internet when we had a conference call. So did it receive royal assent? No. I don't care what it is. Mm-hmm. So if they don't receive royal assent and it doesn't go through that process, it's not a valid law. Now, people say, okay, well, what the heck's a law versus a statute? A statute is a set of regulations to sort of guide the system, but law is developed in a court of law. And I'll give you an example. You're not supposed to speed going down the road according to, let's say, the Traffic Act. So Richard's walking down the road and he sees somebody slumped over in their car. He thinks they're having a sleep. Oh, they got blood on their hands and they're bleeding. And Richard doesn't have a car, so what does he do? He slides the guy over in the other seat. So now he breaks the window because the door was locked. So now he's breaking and entering. He puts the person in the other side of the vehicle. He speeds down the road. He doesn't have his wallet with him because he was walking to his girlfriend's house. Didn't need it. He gets to the hospital. He illegally parks in front of the hospital. He drags this guy in trying to save his life. Look how many laws this guy broke. But a judge would look at that and say, well, that's a statute, that's a guideline. And under the circumstances, he was trying to preserve the guy's life. So he would waive any penalties if he had a brain. But if it was an actual law, he couldn't do that. So that emphasizes and proves that a statute is not a law. Laws are created in the court, and they set up a case. And we talked earlier tonight there about precedent case law. Well, that Clearfield doctrine happened way back when, but it's still valid, right? When we dealt with the Local Government Act, 1888, when we were dealing with council tax, it said that the local council is not to take on a judicial role as a court. It's in the bottom paragraph. If you go through the council tax presentations we did, you'll see it there. So that is a precedent law, right? And you say, well, it's an old law, but if you look at the law books, it's there.
Right.
So that shows you how you can use that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
No worries.
I want to move on now. Thank you to Leslie, who's sent a £10. Thank you very much. Super chat. And Daryl Wigginton says, hi, guys. Thank you for your super chat as well. You stated before can't stop you travelling in any way to the Commonwealth countries. As such, can we sue the UK government and Commonwealth country for stopping us unless we had the COVID-19 jab passport then?
Okay, here's how that works. Your government, let's just say you're a UK citizen, okay, or whatever. You're a citizen of wherever you got your passport. Your local government cannot stop you from traveling within your own country. However, the other country can refuse you because you're not one of their citizens.
Right.
So if you're in the UK and you want to travel from, I don't know, where Richard lives to Lancaster, let him do it. It's not a problem. They can't stop you. And there's an act out, Union with England Act, I think it was called. It clearly states that. And they're not allowed to deprive you of your life, liberty, and happiness. And maybe you have to travel for a certain reason. But if you want to go from England to, say, France, well, France doesn't have to let you in, right? And the same thing with, Canada. In fact, your passport, if you read certain passports, it tells you they're supposed to assist you. Well, they're supposed to assist you, but that doesn't mean the other side has to let you in. Every country has its own corporation, so it may have its own rules.
Right. So the assumption is that, of course, you can just pass the borders, but obviously you're as you just explained, that you're visiting a country, and they've got their own rules. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Constitutional Conventions asks, Why in 1931 would the British Parliament create the Statute of Westminster to nullify the Dominion of Canada if Canada confederated in 1867 and is a sovereign nation?
Okay, what ended up happening? That was easy one, actually.
Oh, right.
What ended up happening was the Canada was formed in a sort of a screwy way, because what ended up happening, there was a Hudson's Bay Company, and what it did was it went from England, it came over to Canada, and it occupied roughly what was 40% of the Canadian landmass, and 2 states down in the United States, a part of them. And what ended up happening was the Queen at the time decided, wait a minute, we're not getting any revenue from Canada. We're getting the odd token here and there. And Hudson's Bay Company had a charter. That's what Canada was. In fact, that's what Canada, well, it partly still is. And so what happened there was the Queen said, we're not getting anything out of this. Hudson's Bay Company can make its own laws, its own rules. It does its own enforcement, has its own everything. It's totally separate. So then what ended up happening was the Queen said, okay, we want a piece of this. So what they did was they set up the Dominion of Canada. And it dealt with New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and a certain portion of Ontario and Quebec. It was Upper and Lower Canada, if you guys do the research. And the rest of it was Rupert's land. If you can look it up on a map. And what they did was they forced the Hudson's Bay Company to turn around and buy back. They bought back the charter. They bought it. They paid for it with the taxpayers' money, of course, and forced them to sell it back. And then they put in a railroad, and they forced Canada to become the Dominion of Canada, gave up this Hudson's Bay Charter. Now, a lot of different dominions that were part of the British realm wanted to be independent, and Canada was one of them. So the Statute of Westminster was established, and what it did was it separated the judicial powers of these different domains. Now, with respect to Canada, it pretty much got rid of most of what the Queen had oversighting and overruling. So then what further happened in Canada after that was they got rid of the British North American Act. The Queen did. She dissolved that. The B&A Act is gone. So there is no Canada. It doesn't exist. And so then what happened next is they developed the Constitution of 1982. But the Constitution of 1982 was contingent upon the provinces all signing off on it. And Quebec didn't sign off on it because they didn't want to have the law put down their throat that said their people in Quebec could be taught in both official languages, and there was some language issues. So they never enacted the British North America, the Constitution of Canada of 1982. So because there is no British North American Act, that was dissolved by the Queen, and there is no Constitution of 1982 because it wasn't signed off by Quebec, there is no Canada, which means there's no Constitution, there's no court system, there's no income tax, there's no anything. The whole legal system and everything doesn't exist because it's all done based on the Queen. This is self-evident. If you walk into a courtroom, you'll see a big coat of arms on the wall. So the only constitution that Canada really has, right, goes back to 1215, the Magna Carta, because everything else was gotten rid of or not enacted. So there's our actual constitution. And that same constitution, Magna Carta, we call it, 1215, it's been renamed to a few different things. But then they tried to codify it, and they tried to make it an act, right, a statute. Well, they can't do that. So the only thing that really exists, it was a promise by the king, right? So they can't codify it. They can't change it. They didn't create it. They can't change it. It's just like our fundamental primary legislation, the Act of Will and Mar, Coronation Oath, Bill of Rights, Great Seal Act. They're all done by some other party, in this case the monarch or the crown, CROWNE. Therefore, local government doesn't have the right to change it. They tried, but they can't do it. If you don't create it, you can't control it. If you don't create it, you can't change it.
There you go.
There you go.
Right, here we go. Here's an interesting question for you from... Sorry, there's a pause there as I'm trying to decipher your name. If I screw it all up, I do apologise. Traken Riders. I'm going to go with that. And the question is, if the new treaty that the WHO, the World Health Organization, want all governments to sign, which will take away all sovereignty from each country, can we just not comply, or will we have to do what the WHO says?
That depends if your government sells you out. But here's a clue. If you guys go look up the United Nations, because they're all tied in this mess too. The United Nations, in the first paragraph of their charter, says they're not supposed to use the armed forces. Okay? Keep that in mind. They're not supposed to use armed forces, and they're supposed to try and settle things privately, peacefully. So therefore, when you pay any tax to the government, your government, UK, Canada, whatever, United States, they're all helping and supporting acts of war and terrorism, which means when you pay tax to the federal government, or HMRC as we call it here, you're actually breaking the law because you're violating the charter. This gives you grounds not to have to pay it. Now, do you have the right to tell these people from the WHO to piss off? Yes, because you guys all have some form, except of Canada, but you guys all have some form of a constitution, and even Canada has the original Magna Carta. So that how can a third party company, because that's what they are, how can they turn around and come in and take away your constitution or your rights? You as individuals, as people of their nations, did not agree to this. Anytime something happens seriously that's going to affect the population of everybody, there has to be a referendum. Now, if we go back to the Brexit thing that happened not too long ago, where Britain tried to exit the European Union, they had to have a vote, a referendum. Well, where's my referendum regarding this WEF and the rest of this crap when they want to take over our system? They didn't do it, so therefore it's unlawful. People, what they should be doing right now is writing to their government by registered letter, majority rules, majority vote, and say, hey, we don't want this. Like who can control what you do in your area better than the people that live there? You know, some outfit in wherever the heck they are, they have no idea what's going on locally.
No, of course not.
No. And I was given another question today too, I'll bring up, and I'll do a presentation on this when I get to it. But people say, well, can council tax technically take my property? Because that's another big question. Or can the government technically take my property? Well, unless you've done something criminal, legally, lawfully, no, they can't, because there's a law on the books, and the same law applies in Alberta that applies to here in the UK or Britain, and that's called the Law of Property Act. So I will do a presentation on that.
The Law of Property Act, so that would be a good one.
That's a good one, because that'll stop this malarkey.
Okay, I want to say thank you to Lily for her donation, very generous donation, £19.99. I'm going to try and top this up and send you half, Stan, for your contribution, because it's your knowledge, really. I might send the whole lot to you because it's really you. And to Robert for his £10 contribution. He says, if Canada doesn't exist and the legislation is invalid, how do they have the authority to stop a Brit from travelling to a province under the COVID rules?
Therein lies the problem, because the passport and the people that come in through Canada go through a federal process. Okay, when you come into Canada, when you land at an airport, an international airport, say in Edmonton or Toronto or whatever, you're not landing in Canada. Okay, you got to realize that that's an international airport. That's international territory. And I dealt with a case in Edmonton where a guy was going to be arrested wrongfully. And so in order to keep the guy safe, I said, you get to live at the airport for the next 2 hours while I go file paperwork in the Edmonton court. And they were waiting to get this guy out of there, and they'd have to file extradition papers, all kinds of crap. And I knew they weren't going to be able to do it. So how can a country stop you? Well, because the federal government doesn't operate lawfully, and people believe in Canada.
Right.
And Canada, as I say, doesn't exist, but everybody's accepted it. See, here's the problem, and this goes back to the other question that the person asked earlier. If you don't object to what the government's doing, then they just merrily march on and they do whatever the heck they do.
Is that like the sort of thing? Whereas if you're consenting by not
Yep.
What's the word? Rebutting.
Yep, silence is acquiescence. You guys can look that up. Or tacit consent, same thing. So if you guys say nothing, then the government says, okay, because remember I said this thing is supposed to go into third reading in Parliament, and then, people have a chance to object. Well, who's going to sit there and check the Gazette every week or every day when they're going to pass a new law? But sometimes somebody does, and then they start announcing, hey, did you know that they're pushing through Bill C-11, which is going to block all of Canada from having a free and independent system on the internet, and they're going to regulate it or whatever? Well, no, I didn't know that. And then everybody starts making noise. But see, this is supposed to be done publicly, and it's always done publicly if it's done at all. It's done through the Gazette. So in Canada, we have an Ontario Gazette, an Alberta Gazette, which is provincial, and one for every province. And then we also have a federal Gazette. So when they're going to pass this thing through with respect to the WEF and all that, go look in the Gazette and see if it was ever announced. It's going to be a big research project. If it was never announced, that's another strike against it.
So you've really got to be quite vigilant on these governments, because they're basically on the principle that people aren't interested and they're just publishing these things, and most people don't pick it up. In the old days, the newspapers would be a service they would do to get their stories, so they could have big splashes on the front page. But it seems that the mainstream media is in step with the government these days, and so a lot of these things sort of are obviously getting through. I've got another question for you. Get back to Daryl, who says, reference the COVID-19 passport question. He says, so then we can sue the UK government only, is that right? However, your first video with Richard, you stated we can travel freely to the Commonwealth countries. So a bit confused by the first video then.
You can travel within the Commonwealth country provided they'll let you in.
Right.
That's how that works. Because look at it this way. Forget that they're countries. Just think of their houses on a street. Right. It's the same thing. Now, if you want to go visit your neighbor, can you just walk into their house and pick up a sandwich and, hey, thank you for being here, and go all about your business? No. So they have a right to restrict you at the door. It's the same thing.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Well, you've answered that. Thanks to Gwyneth for your very generous £10. That's very kind of you. No question associated with that. Lots of chatter going in there. How do we challenge? Here we go. Simba Buff says, how do we challenge the judiciary?
Challenge them in what respect? If it's to deal with council tax, Richard and I have done an extensive video that actually shows all of the issues related to how council tax bills are issued, how the summons is issued, the paperwork. So you have to challenge it on an individual level. But one of the things that I can tell your viewers, and Richard and I again will have to do a presentation on this. Looks like you're not going to get any holidays this year.
No.
But if you ask a government, okay, and I don't care if it's council tax or HMRC or what it is, and you start to challenge them, be prepared for the fight, okay? Just know that up front. They're not going to give up easy. But the thing is, when you ask them to send you a true bill, okay, a true bill must comply with the Bills of Exchange Act, so it must have a signature. It must be accepted by both parties, and there's a number of things. But one of the things that says right in the Bills of Exchange Act is it must contain a contract. So if they send you the bill, then write back to them and say, okay, now send me the contract. If there is no contract, there is no bill. Yeah, right. There can't be a bill without a contract.
Right, but the standard response, of course, is they just refer to that piece of legislation, which I always forget what it is, with reference to council tax, that it's an act, and you just have to pay it.
Well, a local government finance act. That's but then if you look at the council tax enforcement regulation, it gets its authority from the other one, back and forth, and neither one of them received royal assent. And the way they do the paperwork, they said they don't. See, council tax does not send you a bill when you're going there. They're not allowed to send you a bill. They send you a demand notice. A demand notice is not a bill. So send me a true frickin' bill.
Oh, right. That's interesting. So they send you a demand notice. You think that's a bill, but so it's not a true bill because A, there's no contract. It's not signed. It's just a demand. We want you to pay this. We've convinced you that you need to pay it because we've told you it's some law or legislation, but it's not actually a true bill. That is fascinating. Thanks to Gwyneth for your very kind donation there, super chat. Josie Holland asks this: does Stan know anything about direct debit indemnity claims and how to go about it, please?
Yes, there's a what the heck's her name? Stacy's World, I think it's called. They're saying that you can get something back on a direct debit. And although there may be certain times when that does work, here's the issue with the direct debit. Unless that exchange was something that was real, in other words, and it was done fraudulently, then I wouldn't try to do that. Because if you, I'm just going to use this, but if you pay for electricity, right, your electric bill, and you do it through direct debit, so your bill's paid every month, even if it's on a fixed rate billing, who cares? How can you then go back and say, well, okay, I want my money back? If you go to do that, the bank's going to say, okay, what's the issue? And then we're going to involve an investigation. And then 30 days later, they're going to make a determination. Now, if you do this on a number of points, let's say the gas bill, the electricity bill, council tax, your car insurance, because they're all direct debits, the bank's going to say, what's with this person? What the heck are they doing? And you're going to get flagged, and you may even get your account removed. Now, I know of a legal case, and I was directly involved in it, so I'm speaking from firsthand knowledge, where the council said that you had the right to appeal this case, and then they wouldn't honor it. They said, okay, we're not going to give you the right to appeal, and so we're going to issue you a refund. And so they didn't issue the refund for several months. And so the next thing I told the person to say, okay, let's get on with this thing. And so we went to the bank and we said, we want you to give us a refund on this because it's fraud. They didn't provide the service. Therefore, give us back the funds because, why should we give it to council? And they did their investigation just as I indicated. And then they said, no, we're not going to do that. Why? I don't know. So then we turned around and went back to council and said, okay, if you're not going to give us the chance to appeal this thing, we're going to go into the higher court. We don't care. But we're coming after you because now that's unjust enrichment and an act of fraud and, counterfeit and forgery and all a bunch of other stuff. And they immediately issued a refund. A couple of days later, sorry about the misconfusion, blah, blah, blah. And they're trying to cover it up. And we got the refund. So you can't directly always get a direct refund from your direct deposit. There is two different processes to do that. But basically, unless it was an act of fraud where they didn't provide a service, I don't really think you're going to get too far.
Right. See, your knowledge is incredible. We pitch the questions and Stan has the answers. We've only got.
I actually like doing this. I like this. This is fun.
This is good. Well, we'll set up another one. We've only got 15 minutes left, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to whiz off somewhere straight away. So my life is so busy. Deborah, thank you very much for your donation. That's very kind. And also Deb, I think that's Deb in LA or your initials are LA. Thank you very much for your donation. Super chat. It's very generous of you. Now, J Dog asks, Richard, can you ask what we can do to get children back from social services?
Yeah, this is about the ninth time I've heard this week.
Oh, really?
Children's services are doing some pretty horrendous things. Now, I don't know what the reason is why the child was taken or transferred, but if there was no basis for it, then you can file an appeal. And technically, if they keep the child, it's in your care. If you're the registered caregiver, then that's kidnapping, right? And unfortunately, I know of far too many cases like that, especially within the last week. Now, one thing I'll bring up, because like Richard said, he does have to take off. I have an email address. And if not all these questions are going to be answered today, Richard's doing his best, and I give you his best explanation I can. But you can always feel free to email me if you want to do something, privately or whatever, because some people don't want their information disclosed, and it's a private matter. So that's fine. I don't have a problem doing that.
And which email address is that?
I'm typing it in right now.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's S McDonald at smcdonald73 at gmail.com. So I'll let anybody want to get on with typed it in. Yep.
I've just typed
That'll.
it. I'll pin it.
Oh, okay. You did it for me. The other thing I can tell people that if you're challenging council tax or whatever, I have a YouTube channel. And if you do a search for Stan McDonald, all one word like that, you'll find my YouTube channel. And there is information there. I am releasing a book that deals with property standards issues in Canada. I'm releasing a second book that deals with the creation of the Canadian government and the Constitution. That'll get you out of your taxes and stuff like that. And I'm also releasing a book on council tax. And in that book, it goes into far more detail and depth than I did on Richard's interview and on my own presentation. So if people are interested in that book or any of those books, let me know. If you do have a specific topic that you want covered, make it known here or make it known in my email, and I'll see what I can do about making a presentation for it. If I know the subject matter, I'll talk about it or I'll do research on it. If I don't know, I'm not going to give you a presentation. If it's not something I know or something I've lived or walked and talked, I don't do that, because then somebody does something and then they ask, and wait a minute, what do I do now? And well, I don't know. I was told this by Bob. Good luck. And then people get into hot water. I don't do that kind of garbage.
Your books, will they be on PDF or in physical? Asks McCall.
It'll be physical.
Right. That's brilliant.
Because I have letters in there and stuff like that and other documents that are included. And when I do a book, it's not a fluff book. It's not, 90 pages that you don't need and 4 that you do. That's not how I operate.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to start winding this up because, unfortunately, this has been a bit of a test as well from both our sides. You say you've enjoyed it, Stan.
I do.
Absolutely. If people would like more lives like this, then we will do our best to do that. I'll probably try and do some lives on my own in which you can just ask me about my opinion on things. And remember, I'm not an expert in anything, so it'll only be an opinion, and we can debate things. Romanus King, hang on, I've just lost it. Here we go. It says, did the UK work with, thanks for your donation, by the way, did the UK work within the UCC rules while in the EU? And if a case was put together now that happened 10 years ago, would the UK government still be fined under their legislation from the past?
Well, that's an interesting one, because when I did research on this Brexit thing, I did this as a result. There's a court case. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a case there. It says exiting the EU. And it's a whole thing on this exiting and what they did. But what ended up happening when Britain exited the EU, we didn't lose any laws that we had. They either had to already be on the books or they were transferred over. Now, you ask the question, well, is somebody still liable if it's 10 years ago? You have a bit of a problem in any court case, not specifically that one, but any court case, because there's an issue out called a statute of limitations. So anytime you want to bring a case forward, you have to do it in a certain time frame. It's usually 2 years. If, from the time that you knew you were injured, and injured doesn't mean bleeding. Injured means you were done wrong. The only exception to this, okay, there is an exception, is if it's fraud, if it's murder, if it's rape, it doesn't have an expiration period. So if you find out somebody, murdered somebody 20 years ago and you can prove it now due to DNA or whatever, you can then bring the case forward. But if it's a case where somebody breached a contract 15 years ago and you say, okay, I want to bring this forward now, the judge is going to say you're statute barred. You probably won't even get into court. Or if you do, the other side's going to bring it up, say this person's statute barred, that was 15 years ago. So anytime somebody wants to bring a case forward, keep in mind, what's the time frame, when did it happen? Now, it may be that you were injured, as we call it in the legal land, and you only found out it was wrong. It might have happened 4 years ago or 6 years ago, and you only found out, wait a minute, that wasn't legal, and you found out now. Okay, well, clock starts ticking from the time you ought to have known, right? So keep that in mind.
It's been a brilliant evening. Thank you very much. We started around about 20 past. It's just coming up for the last few minutes. So we won't take any long, detailed questions now. Just to say a few thank yous to everybody. A thank you to Trust No One, who's just sent in a donation. Thank you for coming along. If you would like some more of this, it sounds like most people do. We'll try and get some questions in advance, and we'll put an advance notice up saying, so you can email them in, so I'm not having to scroll through. But it seems to have worked quite well. Have you found the experience all right, Stan?
Yes, I enjoy it. In fact, if you want, you can disappear for a couple hours and just come back tomorrow. I like doing this because it helps more people. Now, I'm going to ask everybody here. I'm going to just refer to everybody as the crew. If you guys have something specific you want dealt with, either email me or put it on this list before Richard shuts this whole system down for the night, and I'll do my best to deal with it because there's too many problems, and somebody's got to do something. I got involved in this mess because of the court system, and once I learned it, it's like nobody else should have to do what I had to do. So if you have a specific thing. The other question I have for everybody, I was thinking about organizing a live, actual in-person meet and greet in Lancaster. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know, because I need to know how many people. There may be a small fee involved because to cover the cost of the space, but a lot of people send me, well, one guy in particular, if he's on the call, he'll know who he is. He sends me 15 emails with about 14 attachments each 15 times a day. I don't have time to read that kind of stuff. But if you guys brought me your problem and bring me your paperwork, I'll try and guide you as the best way I can to help you do your own paperwork. The idea here is that people want to learn, and it's not like I don't mind guiding you, but I'm not your babysitter, if you know what and I don't mean that to be derogatory.
No, of course.
I'm trying to guide you guys so you guys will know how to do it better next time.
I mean, once somebody's offering their services and often for free or very low budget, it's very easy for people to sort of swamp you and take you for granted. And whilst, of course, we're all trying to do this, there's only so many hours in the day. We do have lives. We've got other things that we've got to do, and we've got to make a living, etc. So I'm sure most people would accept that. Lara... Now, you've got a lovely name, but I'm going to bugger it up if I say it. Kachinkiarian. I know that's not right. Anyway, she says, Lara says, may I interview you? You are famous in Lebanon. So, yeah, of course. Send me an email, richard@vobes.com, and put interview in the subject heading, and I promise to reply. You'd be very welcome. I'd be more than happy to be interviewed. That's very, very lovely of you to ask me. Famous in Lebanon and Armenia. So,
speaking of Armenia, I want to raise a question for you guys. I've got some paperwork on that as well. I want you guys to bombard your government in Armenia because your government is selling out your land in your territory, and people have been going through wars for at least the last 10 years, and your government's just giving the property away to the adversary. I'll just leave it at that. And that is complete and utter garbage, because Armenia is part of the EU, is part of NATO, and because they're part of NATO, they have the right to request assistance from NATO and not just give your property away. I'm sorry, but that really, really irks me. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that because I want to keep this, properly. But like I say, the Armenian government is in fact part of EU. I will give you a letter you can send to them. Change it slightly so it doesn't look like a cookie cutter template, and I'll gladly email it to you. And you guys have my email as Richard gave it to you before. That is a load of total crap what that government's doing to your people.
Brilliant. Well said. We will do more. Do check out Stan. We're coming to the end now. I'm sorry to be a terrible timekeeper, but I do actually have to go. So thank you so much for watching. We definitely do some more lives now. My great gratitude to Stan McDonald, who has been an absolute stalwart here and answered all your questions. He's come up with answers I wouldn't know where to start. Thank you to everybody who's come along this evening. Very much appreciate that, and all the support. People who've donated money, that's great. Thank you. It all helps. But also just coming along, sharing the videos, telling people about it, watching everything, and of course your emails and all the rest of it. Funky Pepper has his live shows. I'll give him a plug. He says don't do live shows at 9 o'clock on a Friday because that's when he does it. So do check him out. It's what is it today?
It's Saturday, Richard.
It's Saturday. I'm losing track of time. I don't know where I am. So busy. The diary is full. I've got some live events coming up. And I just wanted to say some of them are, well, all over the place. Some of them sort of doing their own publicity. Some need some extra help to get people in. Keep an eye on my website. That's all I can say. I just haven't had time to make the list and put everything up there. It's just been a bit mad. But very much appreciate all the love and affection that everybody has been bringing to the channel. And we will be, Stan and I have written a list here. We will be doing videos on writing affidavits. We would be doing something on bailiffs, the Clearfield Doctrine, the Law of Property Act, and no doubt many more. I will space them out because it sounds like Stan is going to be very busy with lots of other stuff. He's got his books coming out, as he said, and he is going to be doing a live event in Lancaster. If only I was a bit closer, I would come along. And Mike sends $10 rather. He says, thank you, Stan and Richard. I will be back. That's it. We're coming up to past. I said I've got to go. Thank you so much, everybody. Look after yourselves. Until the next time. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Richard.
And we will see you in the future. Till then, bye-bye for now.